welcome back. Frantz Kantor here, cartoonist, illustrator, toon talker, and I'm here in lockdown conditions down in sunny Melbourne, although it's not very sunny today. We've got actually quite an important character to draw today. I'm just sort of sharpening my pencil. I've been working on some sketches of him. So, who are we doing? We're doing this guy. This is a little thumbnail sketch I did, which I'll explain in a second. He passed away today at 98 years young, and his name is Carl Reiner. You might say, who is Carl Reiner? Well, here he is. He starred in and wrote the Dick Van Dyke Show, and that kind of created a style or a sort of a premise, if you will, for sitcoms in the 60s. That was a really funny show. And of course there's Dick Van Dyke, and this is Dick Van Dyke. This was like a recent picture, I think, in the late 2000s. This would be recent. So it's Mel Brooks, one of his other collaborators on the show, was one of the writers. And there's Carl, there's Dick Van Dyke. So he was born in 1922, and he just died June 29th, almost yesterday, the day before yesterday. So comedian, actor, director, screenwriter, publisher, you name it. He's worked with Sid Caesar, the Show of Shows. He did the Dick Van Dyke Show. He was a comedy duo with Mel Brooks. There's a famous routine he did with Mel. They visited a few times the concept, the 2,000-Year-Old Man, which is really funny. And he was also in It's a Mad, 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 Mad World, of course. I think he was one of the airport flight controllers. He was in The Russians Are Coming, and the Ocean series. He also co-wrote and directed some of Steve Martin's most successful films, like The Jerk. So he has a lot of writing and directing and filmmaking and comedy expertise, and he kind of, as I said, transformed the whole of the era. Became really funny. Very cool guy. Very cool guy. This is him with a routine that he did with Mel Brooks, the 2,000-Year-Old Man, which is very hilarious. So let's try to get some kind of a likeness. You can see already he's got very long eyelashes, but he has a very expressive face. There's lots of muscles in this face, so we're going to be exploring that a lot. It was a running joke, of course, on the Dick Van Dyke Show, because he was always losing his hair. The Dick Van Dyke Show premise was he had a show of writers that wrote comedy for a comedian who had an online show, not online, but a weekly show. So they would be writing skits. So they're always talking about the projects or the actual working behind the scenes of comedy. So, okay, let's go. I've done a thumbnail sketch, and I took the opportunity just to work a little bit from that to try to transpose some of that energy. What I do with the thumbnail sketch is I try to break down, this is the photograph that I'm working from, try to break down some very simple shape ideas. So it's like if you were converting it into a cartoon character. Very, very simple, basic cartoon character with a lot of movement. Okay, so this is the sort of shape that I'm trying to favor. I'm trying to keep within that distorted premise. And then I'm going to bring in the details. So I'm going to sort of create an exaggeration and a simplification. So those two elements, those two things, those two ideas, simplification and exaggeration, something that you want to sort of work with. Okay, so that's something to think about along the way. Also, there's kind of the lighting of this, because we're drawing a three-dimensional project. The lighting of this is kind of overhead, sort of an outdoor event, I guess. So a lot of the shadows would be, favored towards the bottom of the object, probably the bottom left. I think we're going to sort of work with. That seems to work. What else do we have to do? The recognition factor of caricatures or portraits or anything is based on the symbols that we understand makes up the face. So these symbols are the eyes, the nose, and the mouth, right? So these areas exist in this sort of a mask area on the front of the head. This is the face. So all of these elements of the face, you're exaggerating in terms of their size and their proportion, and sometimes exaggerating the direction or the contours itself. So what happens is you've got to keep an eye on how these build up, how you build these up in relationship to each other. Okay, so it's not the mouth in relationship to the ear, or the mouth in relationship to the top of the head, or the bottom of the jaw, or anything like that. Those are proportion arguments. Those are arguments if you were drawing something that was fully proportioned, natural, very, very realistically proportioned. That would be part of that dialogue, the part of that, looking back and forth to check, right? But with this, you've changed the rules, already changed the rules. So you've got to have the ball in play, so to speak, even within the rules that you've changed. Okay? So let's keep that in mind, and we'll go into the caricature. Right. So, as I said to you before, he has an extremely expressive face. Actually, his ear's a little bit more pinned back than what I've designed there. So I might just sort of correct them just a little bit. Sometimes you do large ears and elements of the face, and whereas it's fully reasonable to expect men, or mostly men especially, elderly men, to have larger ears. That's a reasonable assumption, right? But in this sense, in the area of cartoon, you're kind of using it as a balancing implement to try to get some form of balance between the forms themselves. So all I'm saying to you is there's a lot more fun to be found than you would normally think of with drawing a face. And this is true with every face that you draw. A lot of faces present themselves as challenges in a way, because they're not immediately you're not immediately able to think of them in a distorted fashion, of some elements bigger than others. So it's something that is inviting to you for just a sense of play. That's all it is. You're just playing. You're pleasing yourself. You're having fun with the assignment, with the project. That's it. That's all it is, right? There's no other reason for this. There can never be any other reason for it, because that very sense of play invites a creative challenge for you. So a creative challenge means that you're breaking some rules, re-establishing some relationships between forms and lines and details. You're re-establishing the rules. You're breaking and re-establishing rules. Kind of like politics today. I promised I wouldn't get involved in politics. Breaking and re-establishing the rules. Oh, I wonder who does that. Everybody! I hope you guys are enjoying the... we've got a lockdown situation here, so I'm actually lecturing and teaching, so I have an excuse to be here and travel. I'm actually, you know what, it's been an interesting occasion, I think, for me, professionally and personally, because, you know, I've always loved the challenge of drawing caricatures, and when I left the newspapers, I never really had the daily grind, or the daily I shouldn't have said that, the daily challenge of drawing. But you know what? Working for the newspaper, I don't know any of you out there have had the pleasure, but my God, you get sick of drawing politicians. You really get sick of drawing politicians. So, in a way, this is like a pleasure. It's a pleasure cruise. So you've got long eyelashes, this guy. He's really personable, very, very expressive. And incredibly sharp, very sharp. So his wit is matched evenly by his intelligence. So, why caricature? Caricature gives you the ability to change things as you see it, as you see fit, right? It's just a game. It's all it is. It's a game. There's no right or wrong way to do a caricature. It's just an exploration, i.e. game. And that's all it is. There's nothing, there's no other reason. There cannot be any other reason. You know, you could do this for a gig, for a job, or whatever, but you'll never learn anything unless you push yourself. And to push yourself, this goes for all art, to push yourself really, you know, gets the results, right? And believe you me, it's like, you know, it's something you have to continue all your life. You never arrive. You're always en route. So you learn something every time you put pencil to paper or stylus to tablet, you know, however you want to frame it. It's the same project, the same idea, different tools. So I never think of digital as different to so-called, you know, analog, which is this. They all have pluses and minuses attached to them, right? So you know that there are things that you can do digitally, like undo in Photoshop, and, you know, get back to certain states. You can grab circle things and move them around on the drawing before you commit, so you don't have to use the eraser so much. And you know, that's always great, but it's always good to maybe not rely so much on finding things in the wash, so to speak. You know, finding things, like create them without the danger element. Certainly going live, like I am now, is a dangerous element, because I could, you know, I might stuff up. I might not get what I wanted out of the caricature, you know, like a likeness that, I mean, it's never going to be exact, is it? It's only going to be approximate, but it's really based on my analyzing the reference material, the photographs that I have. So it's really up to me. Got a lot of freckles. So it's really up to me to, decide what's relevant and what's not relevant in there, including the time factor and the materials. So let's try to there's a lot of muscles here, so I'm kind of trying to match the forms and create a sense of tension between the flesh, the different muscle forms, not identifiable muscle forms, but definitely muscles, tensions, and pushing and pulling in all of the forms of the face. So he's got a really interesting face. All of the elements are well proportioned. This is him, mid-career, I think, or towards the end of his career. Very, very articulate and funny. And I have only known him from obviously the writing and the work on the Dick Van Dyke Show, but which I have never seen until recently, actually. Really appreciated that. But I remember friends playing me the 2,000-Year-Old Man sketch, and of course I was a big fan of Mel Brooks, who isn't, growing up. So that was really funny. You could see they had a lot of fun with that concept. So he played a straight interviewer interviewing Mel Brooks. There you go. So you can imagine what it was like. So it would have been really hard to not crack up. Ooh, slipped. All right, so we're building form with the brown pencil. Okay, so this is what is this, terracotta or something? Yeah, terracotta. So it's a reddish brown pencil, kind of mimics Conti crayon. Okay, so Conti crayon is an earthy sort of pastel or crayon or whatever you wish to call its pigment in pencil form. It can be in stick form without the wood, or it could be in wood, like a wooded pencil like this. And it gives the drawing, like while you're building up tone, I'm working on grey paper. It's a sort of a warm grey paper, I guess. It kind of approximates a flesh tone, like a warmth to it. So that's really important, I think, to give it a sense of humanness. We are always aware of our humanity and our mortality in drawing, because you're actually drawing a lot of things here. You're drawing time, and you're drawing a story that evolves over time. Never thought of that, did you? Haha. See the difference between an artist and a camera. Cameras don't tell stories. Artists tell stories. So we're kind of born to tell. We're kind of born as visual storytellers. As kids, any kid in the world, if you were to give it a crayon, it would know exactly what to do. It would start immediately drawing. But interestingly enough, they don't draw bowls of fruit or anything visible like a camera, which are exercises that we do as adults, I guess. But they draw stories, which are narratives. They're full-on narratives. which I find really interesting. It's almost like we're born to be storytellers, also born to be visual communicators. So it's a natural thing for us to communicate or tell our stories visually. So in essence, we're kind of born as illustrators. That's why I hold illustration with such esteem. Okay, here we go. So I was aware of the 2,000-year-old man sketch. And obviously, you know, I've heard the name Carl Reiner, and I've seen him in various places, like It's a Mad, 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 Mad World, which I think I've spoken of before. It's one of my favorite comedies. Why am I so interested in comedies? I'm interested in a lot of things, actually, as it so happens. Comedy's one of them. Horror's another thing. You know, I love horror films. So let's try to get this. There's a lot of expression in his eyes. His eyes are incredibly sharp. So I want to try to get that that look in there. And there's also this. He has incredibly long, dark eyelashes here. So I want to make sure that they're not forgotten in this drawing. So at the same time, I am looking at the photograph, but I'm thinking also of the geometry of the face. So what makes up, you know, what are the elements that make up the face? You know, the definite role of skin over the eyeball, and also the texture of all of these elements. So that's something that I'm going to increase the importance of, obviously, with like a white pencil. You can see just then how strong the black pencil can overpower the brown pencil quite easily. So you have to be very careful and don't outline everything with a black pencil, because you kind of overemphasize some things more, you know, which may be inappropriate. So you have to sort of balance how pencil obviously gives you the ability to draw hair very well, but you know, and that kind of gives it, you can pick up speed by doing that. But you have to be careful about outlining elements unnecessarily here and there. Okay, so think about what you're drawing while you're drawing it, is what I'm trying to say, and respond with a pencil appropriately. Don't over-emphasize things if they're not there. Think about the tone. Tone is light and shade, right? Light and shade is created by form that interacts with light. So the roundness, the smoothness, the sharpness, all of these things are part of the equation when you're talking about forms. So there's the form of the head itself, which is this stylized approach here. Right, that's what I'm trying to aim for. This. So if I was doing a cartoon character, this is what I would do. It would look like that. Kind of nice. I kind of like that. But I'm putting detail into that cartoon shape. Okay, so we should be careful not to drag pigment across the paper. Even though, you know, the pencil's quite hard, but it will tend to smudge a little bit here and there. So before I go over this area, I'm going to start to block in the eyes and build up a sort of a dialogue here with the other forms, the eyes, the nose, and the mouth, the mask area, right? So remember, as I said to you before, this is something that you need to think about while you're doing it. You need to focus on the relationships between them all. So working closely on one eye, you've got, you zoom back and forth to the left eye, then the nose and the mouth. So you're always comparing and deciding as you go. All right, and including that is the photograph. So you've got like 4 things to look at. It's quite a workout, but hey, if your neck can take it, do it. His eyelashes are incredibly long, which means that he is very, very expressive. So this is a man who can really impose his thoughts on the world. He knows how to do that. He's like an expert at it. So, if you wanted to explain anything at all, this guy pretty much could do that. You get a feeling of that presence of mind with this face. So, and because he's a writer, he can think. He's a comedy writer, so he can definitely think outside the box, right? So, a lot of the best comedy, observational comedy, is based on looking at something that we've all taken for granted, and then presenting it to you as a weird premise, as something that, have you ever thought about this? Like, remember the Seinfeld experience of observational humor that's based on things that we're all familiar with, but we're kind of we've taken them for granted. So when you get somebody talking them up in a different context, then it sort of draws attention to the characteristics or the weirdness of the premise or the concepts. There's a lot of pushing and pulling here. I just realized this. It's a lot of it's not very strong. It's more on one side than the other. So it's more one-sided than the other. So what it is there's a dialogue. So the head itself has these. Let's pick a head. The head is round, close to the skull. Okay, so here we go. The forehead is round, close to the skull. Over the top of that is very fine muscles that push and pull, and they pull laterally and they pull and push longitudinally like this. So what that does is that all the muscles here are created for three reasons. Okay, 3 reasons. Bear with me. One reason, obviously, is to protect the face. So when it's very bright, your eyes squint, so the muscles contract and everything like that. Fine, yes? When you're being hit in the eye, your muscles contract, so that protects the eye. So protection is one, obviously. There's a lot of parts of the body that do that. Reflexes come into play. If someone was to throw something at you, your immediate thing is to duck or to put your hand up in front of your face. The other thing is, too, the face is used to communicate. Expressions are designed to communicate thoughts. And the third thing about the thoughts is emotions play on the face. Now, they may have a desired effect of say, a child crying. Someone sees the child crying and offers assistance, right? So that expression of crying elicits empathy from the viewer, from the another human being. Simple, right? Evolutionally designed to protect us, to get assistance from other members of the pack. The third thing, though, is that the emotions are very powerful, and they tend to create like a story in the geography of the face, of the features of the face. So when you have lines that push, there's forces that are contracting on both sides of the head to force itself. So if you follow the belief of the left and right brain, that just means that the concepts of left and right brain, logic and illogic, they're opposing forces, right? But they tend to contradict. They tend to have a dialogue all the time. So that means that there's a lot of logic and illogic going on in his head. A lot. And constant battle of, say, seriousness and humor would do it. That would create that pattern in your face. So, if you have a lot of tragedy in your life matched with a lot of humor, that would do it as well. Because all it does is create these emotions, and the emotions have an effect on the muscles, and they leave marks behind. This is like the rivers, the gouged out earth of, say, the Grand Canyon. So it started out as a little trickle, like a gutter. If you ever saw the episode of the Flintstones where they go and visit the Grand Canyon, Wilma says, "Oh, big deal, the Grand Canyon," because it's just a little trickle, like a gutter in the ground. And Fred says, "Well, you may laugh, but this is going to be a big thing one day." So he's a really, really smart guy, and there's a lot of stuff going on in his head, and you can tell that by this battle of wills, of these emotions and thoughts that create these rivers and valleys and road. It's a road map. It's geography. This is geography, okay? You didn't think you'd get a geography lesson, did you? Hey, we're going to do geography today. Yay! So, yeah, geography. I don't know what your geography teacher was like, but I didn't have a good one. I never had a good relationship with my geography teacher. Could never really get it. Too much to remember, people like they find a river and then they name it after themselves. The guy that found the river, it's not named after some guy that drowned in the river or fell into the river or was so happy that he found water in the desert or something. No, it's named after some explorer that just happens to, hey, look, a river, that's my river. It's like Monopoly. It's like a spoiled kid with a Monopoly, playing Monopoly. This is mine. This is my park lane. Well, you haven't landed on it. No, it's my park lane. Okay. Explorers, finding things that existed before. And then we put statues up. This guy found something that we thought we'd lost. It wasn't really lost. It was there all the time. But we put a big statue up of him. What a pleasure it is to do some caricature of this beautiful face. I can just feel the, drawing kind of, when you're drawing forms, right? So in a way you're kind of feeling these structures, this geography under your fingertips, and it's kind of cathartic. It's kind of very sensual experience, because you're massaging like a sculptor, right? That's exactly what it is. Like you're sculpting form with shadow, light and shade. So if you've ever done sculpture, there's some element about caricatures that very much like that. It reminds me of sculpture. So it's a pushing and pulling of forms and shapes and things to create a relevance of some form of, context or story or narrative, whatever. So only the sketch with Mel Brooks that I remember. And then recently, of course, I saw the Dick Van Dyke show on Netflix. So I never saw that. I think we had it in Australia. I think we may have had it. Don't get upset. I just didn't notice it, or it would have been maybe a time that, I was asleep. Who knows? I don't remember. But since colour TV, of course, it hasn't really been in syndication. So you can't really blame me for that. Because it's a black and white show. Mary Tyler Moore was in it. She was good. Soupy Sales was in it. He's a stand-up guy. He was really good. And they had a bunch of guests. And, it was it was a clever premise, actually. So there were writers for a comedian, which is Carl Reiner, and he appeared in the show as the boss. They're working for him, and he was really, the whole premise was really cleverly done. It was almost like a look behind the scenes type of thing of a comedy show. So they'd be writing sketches and gags and things like that, and some gags would work, and he would like some and not like others, and things like that. So there was a lot of truth in the humor. They say the best form of humor has some level of believability, some level of truth, so it kind of reflects something that we're familiar with. Hence I guess observational humor is a thing, because we're familiar with airline travel or whatever it is, and the reflections that you're making on it are something that we may have thought of before. It may have occurred to us, but hearing it out loud is kind of making it funnier. So truth is in comedy is something that you kind of agree with. You agree with the premise. You agree with the joke because it reflects your experience somehow. So a lot of that is in drawing as well. You reflect on things. I find it really interesting that it has the ability to transcend the lightness in a way. So, like you can see a photograph of somebody, and then, that has an effect on you, and then you see the person as a painting or a drawing or a caricature, and then it has a different effect on you, but it's the same person. So why is that? Why does that happen? It's because there's a narrative element of art that's in drawing. It's not necessarily in the painting, but it's in the drawing part, right? So underneath all paintings is a drawing, right? So there's a slow process of analysis and storytelling, visual storytelling, on a contextual level. So the story that I'm telling of Carl Reiner is contextual, based on my impressions of my understanding of him, my memories of him in such a limited area, but also on things that I can glean or discover in a way from drawing the face, because I've got to think about a lot of things with the drawing. I've got to think about the anatomy. I've got to think about the perspective of the head. You know, the texture, how to create certain textures. Let's try to, sorry, I'm trying to rule without a ruler. Story of my life. I like the organic approach to drawing straight lines, you know, because even if you get it wrong, you're kind of right. You're right, even though you're wrong. Interesting, isn't it? All right, got a white. We're going to use a white pencil, but before I do that, I just want to get some of these highlights in here because I think they're really relevant. Actually, even before, let's go with some heavier line work. I think that might be interesting. So we'll try to darken some of these elements, obviously with the eyes. I'm going to fill in the highlight because I'm going to bring it back with the white paint pen, which is opaque. But you know, the eyelashes here might be good to, this goes, because it's a brush, it goes thick and thin depending on the angle and the pressure that you bring to bear. Okay, all right. So eyebrows have a direction. All eyebrows have a direction of hair or fur that grows in a certain pattern, certain direction. So you basically look at, it's like you know, looking at the wind or looking at the effects of the wind, thinking which is the direction. Is it a northeasterly or, you know, whatever? Where is the direction of the winds? It's the same thing with hair. Hair has like a definite direction of growth pattern. So it's just something in all the things that you think about when you do a drawing. That's just one of the elements that you have to think about. But you do it in a really interesting way. It's like an organic way. You never think about it until you get to the eyebrow. You never think about it until you get to the part, because then your mind has to be really super focused, doesn't it? And it's very important to focus on what you're doing, because something might occur. If you're not present, it won't occur to you. So you have to kind of be in the moment, if you will. This is really nice. This brush is behaving itself today. So, oh, maybe I spoke too soon. No, that'll do. So I'm trying to increase the contrast. Of course, use a black pencil, but you know, even in cases like this, the black pencil is not going to be absolute black. So some elements that you want to punch out make it more three-dimensional, like the outlines of these forms, you know, around the head, etc. Then it's probably better to use a brush. It's just going to help a little bit more. He's got a black jacket, but I think I might just leave it. I might just, actually, let's just do it. See what happens. I might leave the jacket alone. Okay, so the reason why I'm doing that is I want to sort of keep focus a little bit more. So any large areas of contrast of black areas or whatever. I want to try to sort of stay away from a little bit. Okay, so we've done a little shine on the nose and a little shine on the cheek, and we just want to get rid of the brown pencil a little bit, because when you use a white pencil and there's a lot of brown underneath, it tends to go pink too much. So we need to have some level of control over the pinkness of the pencil, the highlights. So I'm going to explain this, what I'm doing in a second. I'm going to build up a little bit of form with the white pencil. Oops, let's get rid of those some of those confusing lines. I'll try to get rid of, soften a bit. Okay, so I'm building a sculptural effect here. Okay, so I'm going to be helping, obviously, with the white pen to build up a lot more contrast, but basically to pick out from the grey paper highlight areas of shine or elements that catch the light, right? Because it's all about believability. Believability comes from little details that you create a narrative, an ongoing story of light and shade and forms. So even though it's a caricature, or in many ways it's simplified in terms of cartoon, there is a lot of to my point anyway, to my interest is in the challenge of creating a believable narrative of light and shade and form details. So it's like a story that makes sense to me. May not make any sense to anyone else, but you know what? C'est la vie. It's part of the game, isn't it? You're really just in the business of entertaining yourself. It's number one prime motive is to create something that you enjoy doing. Otherwise, you know what happens? You won't enjoy doing it and you'll stop. So it's very important to always draw for you. No matter what you're doing, you have to sort of keep an eye on what you like to draw. So I'm thinking about what I like about Carl's face here, and it may have very little to do with the likeness. So it's a secondary kind of concept, I guess. The likeness itself, it's a secondary thing. Really trying to capture some of the textures and the shininess and matte areas of his face. So maybe I can get a level of believability or recognition in those things, those elements. Time will tell. We don't know. You can see I'm going to accentuate these pushing, pulling lines a little bit because I can, and I think it adds to the drama, overall drama of the picture, because it's like something that it's some enigma. What do they mean by enigma? Often cite the Mona Lisa having an enigmatic smile. What does that mean? It means an enigma is a puzzle. So it's something that may have a meaning that is beyond the picture plane, or is only hinted at by certain muscles or lines, or the drawing underneath. And sometimes unintended by the artist, because while you're drawing, there's a lot of the subliminal stuff happening, so you can fully appreciate the level of detailing or storytelling that you're doing. You're actually forgetting some of the elements of the story. So, and that's true with a lot of faces that you draw. Sometimes, you could hint at something with an expression. It could be just a flick of a line, but you've opened up a different dialogue. So let's get some shine in there before we go any further. Got this white pen, and it should be opaque. Oh no, it's not. That's interesting. Okay, so go back to it. Just want a nice clean reflection. Match it with a reflection of the reflection in the lower lid. Build up some of the relevant shine here and there. Remember the eye. The white of the eye is never white. It's always darker. I mean, it's always, in order to show a reflection, you can only show the reflection against a tone. You can't really show it very well if the eye doesn't have any tone, if it's just white. So what I'm doing here is I'm building up this slight thin side light, a rim light, just to catch the edge of the face. And of course I'm complementing it with the reflections coming in on the head, and hopefully that will give the drawing a little bit more 3 dimensions. So it might work, might backfire, but we'll see. I don't want to do it all over. I want to sort of keep it concentrated a little bit. Alright, so that looks to be okay. Let's continue with a white pencil and slowly build up more form. So I need to get into the cheek with a stronger light, highlight here, into the mustache area, this part here which is usually quite shiny, and to the upper part of the lip. This is where a lot of people perspire, don't they? So especially under lights or under certain conditions, you see a lot of shine on this upper portion of the lip. Too much shine could indicate nervousness. Okay, go. Looks like it's working all right. So far, so good. So I'm not colouring in with the white. I'm just creating light areas that create a sense of shine in the form. Okay, there's a lot of shine around the eyes. His eyes are incredibly expressive, very, very expressive. So as a guy that's really got his eye on the ball in many ways. With comedians need to. I've smudged it. Comedians need to observe. Observational humor, obviously, is based on observing. So that's a big duh, But this is what's happening in his face. It's reflected in his face. There's a bit of smudging going on here. The white pencil's turning grey. So I don't know if I can repair that. I'll have to be careful. So I'll repair that. There's a bit of shine on the beard area. Again, there's a lot of sweat glands down there. I might wonder if I should bring in some of the reflection, maybe just a little bit into the chin area, you know, that light. I might try to bring that in. It's not something I can see in the photograph, but you know, it can add to the volumes that I'm trying to draw, three-dimensional volumes. All right, so it's looking safe at the moment. Here's this pencil here, this brush pen, which is a white flexible nib. It's got a pump at the top, so I'll try to get some paint out. Again, this is an acrylic, so it's quite opaque, and it's going to dramatically increase the contrasts of the areas. There we go. Just want to catch a little bit of light here and there. He's got quite yellow teeth. Of course, he's smoked cigar all his life. That might work. What's happening up here? Okay, so I'm going to go back over this area a little bit, just create a few random white streaks of hair. That might work all right. I think I might contrast they call that the dicky. It's like a black tie dress shirt. This is the starched bit in comedies and cartoons that always flips up. Probably doesn't have it in real life, but I just thought I'd mention it. Can't really tell what the shirt is. I'm not sure whether it's a dicky shirt or what. So yeah. Let's get the softer white pencil. That might work better. Don't know. What else am I missing here? Nearly there. Nearly there. I don't think I can do any more than that. It's very interesting. Does it look like him? A little bit, I think. Let's try to fix the, let's try to create a bit of contrast in the background. We'll use this and create a sort of a basket weave texture with a white pencil, with a white pen. So this is just to help the negative space, which is around the forms, around the face, just stand out a little bit, or make the head stand out a little bit from the background. So the background is contained in this sort of a device, this window, this box, this frame, and kind of sticks out a little bit from that. So it gives it a three-dimensional prospect of overlapping forms. So I don't want to make it stark white, I just want to help it just a little bit. I still want to keep the attention on the face and the eyes, the dialogue here that I've spent a lot of time doing. I don't want to take anything away from that by having too much contrast in the background. So in a pencil you've got it's not a finished illustration. It can be. I mean, why not? Pencils are finished. But the idea is to create a pencil that has some finish and some unfinish in the proposal, in the execution of it. Kind of keeps it more, I think, human, more certainly organic, but I think, doesn't hide the pencil lines. I'm not using the pencil lines as a beginning, but just part of the whole story itself. That's why it's a drawing, not painting. Okay, here we go. Let's go. R-E-I-N-E-R. Carl Reiner. There we go. Before and after. Let's have a look. That's him before. That's him after. Let's have a look at another expression. So, it's all in the eyes here, folks. It's all in the eyes. So there's my Carl Reiner, and rest in peace, Carl. Vale Carl, whatever you think. Do try to YouTube or Spotify the 2,000-year-old man. The sketch he did with Mel Brooks. You'll be well rewarded. It's very, very clever. All right, this is Frantz Kantor, and I will catch you on the flip side. Bye-bye.